So before today's video starts, I want to give a quick thanks to everybody who's been watching and subscribing to the channel. I just recently hit over 1,000 subscribers, which isn't huge, but it is definitely a small milestone in my channel's progression. So thank you everybody who has been supportive. If you're not subscribed, definitely make sure to sub to the channel, like the video. Today's video was actually made because I had a YouTube comment asking about some things on my Supercharger. So definitely make sure to ask any questions you guys have in the comments below. I try my best to answer them. If it's a more complicated question, I can make videos if you want to see something different, if you want to see something specific on the car. If you have any questions that would be better solved with a video, I can definitely do that kind of stuff. So please, I encourage you to leave comments, ask all the questions you need to ask. I know a lot of this stuff gets very complicated. There's lots of questions. I had lots of questions when I first started doing this kind of stuff. I still do. I ask questions on other people's channels. I get into forums to try to figure out this information. So don't be worried to ask as much as you guys need to. That's really what the comment section was created for, so that we can continue to communicate with each other. Again, I appreciate all the support and I hope you enjoyed today's video. So here is my Stage 2 Active Autowerke Supercharger on my 330 Ci. I was asked to talk about my experience so far. I've owned the Supercharger kit for just over a year and a half. I'm going to go over some of the pros and cons and some of the things that I've been fighting to make the kit work properly. First off, we're going to go over the routing of everything so that everybody can see like more in detail about how all this is routed. I tried to take a lot of videos, so if you see a lot of these clips like repeating, don't freak out too much. Hopefully we'll get every single angle. Some of these shots were a little bit dark, so hopefully everybody can see everything. So the first thing we're gonna go over is probably the most important thing you need to do when setting up this Supercharger from this manufacturer is actually the oil that cools the Supercharger. So the Supercharger will pump its own oil, and it has an external oil supply kit. This is on the passenger side, and then as you can see, it runs one hose, goes back behind the engine and around. You can see the filter there next to the brake booster, comes around forward and connects to the right hand side of the Supercharger when you're facing the car. That is the inlet side. After it's lubed up, it's pumped out of the hot side and it runs back behind my headlight here and then runs into my oil cooler. Once it hits the oil cooler, it's cooled off and then put back through the exact same location but on the other side of the car, and then runs back into the top of this reservoir. So one of the more complicated things about this system is actually getting all of your vacuum lines set up. So the smaller lines that come out of the top of the blow-off valve, there's actually only one piece that goes into the blow-off valve, and that goes into the top. The bottom nipple actually isn't used. Then you can actually see that it's teed off. The one on the right is connected to a clear line that runs to my boost gauge, and the T on the left side runs to the back of the intake manifold. Now the F connector actually has the smaller piece plugged off, and then the larger piece actually runs down back behind here to this little regulator thing. I'm not actually sure what that is, but it shows, that part actually shows you pretty well in the instruction manual. One thing you want to make sure that to be careful of is actually getting this pipe where it needs to sit. If you look here really closely, it's scratched up pretty bad. That's because it was actually hitting the chicken wire on the bottom of my hood. So speaking of charge piping, it comes off the turbo and then it goes straight down and through the front bumper here. You actually have to modify the front of the car to get this to fit, but there it is coming into the intercooler, runs across the intercooler, cools off, and then heads into the intake manifold. Now one thing I have noticed is the Supercharger actually really doesn't get that hot. It's uncomfortable to put your hand on it when it's really warm, but it's not like a turbocharger where it would burn you immediately if you put your hand anywhere near it. It's actually pretty cool. And when it comes into the intercooler, the start of the intercooler is a little bit warm, but by the time you get to the other side, it is so ice cold, it's not even noticeable that that's what, you know, that you've got hot air going into there. So this system actually stays really cool. And I'm not sure how the Stage 1 system does, but I know this Stage 2 system, I have never had any issues with it getting too hot, or you hear a lot of heat soak issues with a lot of these BMWs that are supercharged. I've never had any issues like that. So the other thing you can see here is this engine cover is actually lifted up a little bit. That's because the fuel rail is lifted up about a ½ inch, and that's because it uses bigger injectors. The injectors are from an M3, and that's so you can get more fuel into the system because it's going to need it for that Supercharger. Now this is something that I fought quite a bit actually. You can see here there's an adjustment rod. This is how you align your Supercharger to your serpentine belt so it doesn't sit there and squeak and chew your belt up. This is very difficult to get set up. The best way I've been able to get this to work is to actually put the hose clamps on like they're supposed to, and then put a second hose clamp that holds this bar in. And as you can see on my kit, kit, you can actually see that piece that's being clamped down is actually started to slide out a little bit. I have been fighting that a lot and trying to get my supercharger aligned. It starts to squeak pretty bad when you first start it up. So that's definitely something you want to make sure you get aligned right and take your time doing. So that's really all the routing that there is. It's not that complicated. It was pretty easy to figure out once I knew what I was looking for, and you just got to really study the instructions. One of the things that actually helped me out a lot was to get the instructions for the stage 1 kit, and actually I got the instructions for the E46 supercharger kit and the M3 E46 supercharger kit. I got all of those instructions together and I actually read them because they show different angles and a lot of the kits are set up very similarly, so that helped me out a ton putting in this supercharger kit. So I would definitely recommend doing all the reading, everything that you can think of to try to prep yourself for an install like this, so that you're not spending several weeks with your car apart trying to get your supercharger in. Something like this can be done in as little as like 10 hours, even to somebody who's not super experienced. So I know I mixed in a couple of the cons in this routing section. So as I was showing you where everything was running to, I actually told you some of the things that I had issues with. Some more cons that I fought. I have been fighting boost leaks pretty constant, and a lot of them come from these two little nipples that sit underneath this charge pipe. It's actually called the snail pipe. There's two aluminum pieces that screw into this, and one of them broke, and I was worried about the other one breaking. So I replaced the smaller one with brass, and I replaced the bigger one with another piece of aluminum, and then just held on to the old one just in case. And then I had to nylon tape the threads so that it would stop leaking through there. The other thing I was leaking through was the Tenza, so I actually replaced that as well so it would stop leaking through there. I bought a cheap one that was like $200, and it I'm not sure what it did. It blew a gasket inside somewhere like immediately. And so I actually had to return that one and go buy a BMW OEM. I'm not sure what brand it is, but the one that actually came on the car originally. And that ended up helping me out a ton. It didn't have any issues after that. So the other thing you'll notice is I have this box kind of sitting weird up on the wheel well on the inside of the engine. They actually give you a bracket to mount that somewhere else. I never really got it to fit, so it's just kind of zip tied there, and I just hope that it doesn't move anywhere. But you can see the intake takes up where that used to be, and so I had to move it out of the way. I'm still fighting the fact that I'm running rich. Tune that to boost leaks. I think I'm still fighting something somewhere. I must not have something put together right. I still get the proper PSI on my boost gauge, even though you can see here it says -4. That's what I get for buying a $20 boost gauge off of eBay, but it's been consistently wrong. It's always been -4. So I see like 5 PSI positive. So -4 plus 5 is going to be 9 positive PSI. So I haven't replaced it yet, but make sure you buy actual boost gauges. Don't cheap out. This one was like $20. So you're going to want to buy a nice boost gauge so that you're not fighting this. So that's really kind of all the cons I can think of. And most of these are replace parts that tend to wear. Replace them before you get the kit. You'll want to replace the Tenza valve, check your thermostat. Some of the upgrades that I did was I did a bigger radiator. I did an upgraded thermostat and an upgraded clutch to handle all this extra power. So just keep that in mind. Everything that tends to have issues on this M54 engine will be amplified with this supercharger kit. Now we're going to talk about some of the pros with this kit. Like I said earlier, this can be put in a day. It's really not that hard. Once you know what you're looking at and you get all your routing figured out, it is really just not that difficult to put in. It's in this nice tight package. I think it makes the engine bay look completely awesome. It's actually kind of difficult to even tell there's much different on one of these cars unless you really know what you're looking for. Pros with performance, obviously there's a massive horsepower increase. Almost doubled my horsepower, and it added about 70 pound-feet of torque, which is a lot. It was a major difference. So you could definitely tell there was a huge power bump. The other thing I like about this kit is how linear it is. It's not like a big turbo kit on a little engine where you're just on the engine for half the rev range and then all of a sudden your turbo kicks in, you got it for a couple seconds and then you're into the next gear. This comes on almost immediately. There's basically no lag time. And we were talking about track racing one of these cars. That is really where you need your power to be is there instant. You don't want to have to wait around. You want to just be in it all the time. No matter where you are in the rev range, it's ready to go. So my absolute final thoughts on this supercharger kit is, was it worth it? Yes. I would recommend this kit to someone who doesn't really know how to modify a car to the point where you're putting a turbocharger on it. This is definitely something for somebody who's obviously mechanically inclined, but doesn't want to, go through the entire process of putting in a turbo kit. This is a cut and dry, comes with everything you need, instructions, top to bottom, you're ready to go out of the box. The other comment that I had asked me, would you daily drive this setup on a car? My answer to that would be yes, absolutely. Now, on mine, I have my throttle sensitivity turned way up because I actually asked Active Auto Work to make sure that it was really nice and sharp. But if that was dialed back, you could definitely daily drive this. People put tens of thousands of miles on these superchargers every year. They'll daily drive the car just like it used to be before the supercharger. For my race car, this supercharger really only gets about 1,500 miles, maybe 2,000 miles a year put on it. So this is going to last me a really, really long time. So yeah, overall, I am very happy with this kit. I don't think that you would be disappointed with this. I've never had anybody get into the car and go, oh, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It's always like completely blown their minds. And I know it's not the highest horsepower. You take that extra 150 horsepower that I got and you add the weight reduction to it, and it really makes this car just extremely fast. So I really hope this video helped out everybody who had questions about the supercharger kit. Anybody who hadn't seen one in person, hopefully this was able to really get some good shots of it so that you can see what exactly is going on underneath there. If you're really thinking about this kit, it is absolutely awesome. I don't regret it one bit. As I said in the beginning of the video, please continue to comment all of your questions, video ideas, things that you need to see, things that you need explained. There's nothing wrong with any of that. That is definitely what I'm here for. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.